which is relevant to this conversation. It is also relevant simply because in today's global context of climate change, it is absolutely critical that we get some good stories about impact. And that's why this conversation is timely. I wanted to talk about two things. First of all, the challenge that we face when it comes to loss and damage, and maybe suggest a couple of areas of the solutions, which all of us together collectively can be part of the solution. And I hope that will provide some food for thought for your conversation that you're about to have. On the problem and the challenge, unfortunately, while we're trying to find the solutions, the extreme weather conditions and slow onsets are getting worse, not getting better. And they come with a long list of consequences, particularly on economic losses and non-economic losses. But more importantly, they come with the human face of the people in developing countries, particularly the most vulnerable countries who are affected by climate challenges. And it's very important that we're mindful. We are dealing with a situation that really has a particular human face, and it's important for us to be reminded of that situation. When we were in the Philippines, we actually witnessed a tropical cyclone and an earthquake. In Southern Africa, you can see the El Nino coming in and creating a lot of devastation in many countries that are unfortunately not gifted in terms of resources. So there's really a sense of urgency for us to take action. And now, moving into the solutions, I see a couple of areas that need to be put together in a way that we can come up with sustainable solution dealing with loss and damage. I think number one is the global solidarity in addressing actually loss and damage in the most vulnerable countries. If I look at the FRLD, which I run the secretariat, in my view, it's a great example, a great testament of what we can achieve when we come together. If you look at the journey, it was actually decided at COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh to have a fund entirely dedicated to loss and damage. By the time we get to COP30, we're talking about making a call for proposal for support to be provided to countries. And that's a remarkable journey. It's only been achieved simply because the civil society, the government, and all the parties came together and decided to stay focused in providing a solution. So part of the solution is keeping the momentum. Just because we have the fund doesn't necessarily we're successful. It means that whatever we've done up to now, we need to keep the momentum so we can get to the finish line and making sure we're relevant to the countries. I think second part of the solution, and this is really very much relevant to your conversation as think tank, and that is depending on which source you quote, there's always some differences in terms of the state of the problem. So I believe that science and data have to really guide the conversation. So policymakers can actually make decisions on the basis of science and data, as opposed to other elements. I think it's important that the research and development institution, the academic institution you are, and the scientific organization can really contribute in providing the data that's required for countries actually to be able to at least understand what they're exposed to. I think the third part of the solution, and that's the relevancy to the countries. No matter what we do in our board of 26 members, very committed, ultimately, what we offer to the countries have to be relevant to their problems and so on. And that relevancy, we understood it very well at FRLD and understand the sense of urgency for us to take actions. And just to give you an update, as of today, FRLD has received, has at least a pledge of $788 million from 28 countries. And then out of that money, almost close to $400 million have already been actually dispersed to FRLD, making it possible for us to actually take action. Now, what our board has decided is to put aside $250 million going to extreme weather condition, slow onset, providing support $5 to $20 million for each initiative. 50% of the money goes to the LDCs and the seed, which is the most vulnerable. And then we also want to make sure that it's provided as grant only through direct access or budget support as well. So the major decision that took place in Manila, and I'm speaking under the control of my board member, Antonella, was we needed to have three main decisions for us to move forward. And one was the funding cycle, so the country have visibility in what it takes to actually assess the proposition. We had to agree on the funding eligibility and criteria. We also had to agree on the access modalities. So the board has approved all of those three, making it possible for us to make what we call a call for funding requests. And that's why we are super excited about COP30, because we're going there as an organization to provide at least to be part of the solution so that we can begin to help the countries. What our board also has decided later on, we can commit more resources if it turns out to be it's oversubscribed, which is going to be the case for the $250 million. I think the next part of the solution, and our board understand this, is our fund need to be highly capitalized to get in the billions, because the needs are such that some people will quote about $250 million. So our board understand it's important that we have a very sustainable resource mobilization strategy at a replenishment, hopefully by 2027, so that we can keep up with the demand. I think the innovation comes from the fact that today, given the situation of the global ODA, where funding is very difficult to come from public sector, it is important that we diversify our source of funding, explore the philanthropy, the private sector, and individual financing, levies, and so on, so we can get more predictable financing, which will help us to really support the countries going forward. I think the last two things I wanted to say before I wrap up is the solution also requires inclusiveness, so that civil society, academia, private sector, and all the other players that are important can be part of the solution. And that's why at our board, we actually have what we call an observer civil society dialogue, where we basically get the civil society to talk to our board, so that those who are on the front line of loss and damage, we bring their perspective, so we can bring that human face to it. I think the last message I want to convey is the issue of complementarity without a climate fund. We're not the only climate fund here. You got GCF, you got Climate Investment Fund, you got Adaptation Fund, and so on. So all these countries are dealing with the same countries that we're trying to support. It is very important we don't actually duplicate our efforts and find a way to support the countries. So I think in conclusion, what I want to say, this is an exciting time for us as a fund to continue to understand the sense of the human face of climate change, to be relevant to the countries, to be impactful, to tell the great stories of the impact that we have from our support. And that's why I am extremely grateful to the government of Italy for having pledged about $100 million to the fund, and for other countries from the EU who also pledge to the fund as well. And that's why it's really important that we come together as a community, and you do have a role to play as think tank in making sure we give us the data and information we require to make some informed decisions. So on that note, thank you very much for the invitation. Too bad you can't see my video, but I'm sure you know what I look like. And I leave it that way. And but thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibrahima. Too bad that you cannot share this panel with us, but thank you very much for this your contribution. Very important moment for the fund for responding to loss and damage, and we look forward for announcing the first wave of intervention and financial request to the fund that will be announced at COP30. So thank you very much, and see you soon. Ciao.
Yeah, and you can see my video now, so at least after I finish my talk. All right, well, thank you very much.
Finally, we can see you.
Exactly. I thought you knew what I look like, but in the end, I wish you a great meeting, and I look forward to partnering with the think tank from Italy as we continue to engage with the most vulnerable countries, because what we do is bigger than all of us, and we need to come together. And I'm delighted my board member, Antonella, is there. She plays a major role at the board in at least bringing the voice of Italy to the board. And thank you very much. All the best.
Grazie. Ciao.
Grazie a tutti.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim. Gianfranco. Okay, so I think I can be a bit redundant because I had the privilege of being introduced by Ibrahima. Many things have been said, but let me give you a sense of what we are going to do with the students and what we are going to propose. Ibrahima said many things and also some optimistic news about what is going to be done in the COP30, so we hope. And he said also some very important, let's say, words and labels, solidarity, for instance, and the idea that this should be a common effort and also that should be sustainable in time. The importance of loss and damages is not something I should say to you. It's obviously very well known because climate change, after all, is not simply climate change. It's dangerous climate change, as in the UNFCCC. Okay, so dangerous is damages, and we should try to do something for people who have been damaged, for possibly also in Serbia, but this is something we are going to work in the near future. And paying or compensating or distributing justice for damages could be very complicated. So what we are going to do in the PSSG is proposing a kind of solution which is mixed, also considering another thing that Ibrahima said, many streams of funding, private sector, public sectors, many forms of the engagement of public sectors. Could be a pledge, could be a grant, and so on and so forth. So we are going to propose some criteria of eligibility for countries, some criteria of distinction of the kind of funding, incentives for private sectors, and also all of that will be done in the framework of climate justice. There are principles, of course. There are common sense principles of ethics and politics, according to which if it is a damage, the damage should be compensated in a sense, or people should be relieved. And we're trying to put together very, let's say, detailed and policy-oriented solutions with some ethical principles. That's it, and we will be glad to see you in the room.
Thank you very much. Gianfranco is from Luis, and now let's go to Bocconi. It's not normal to have a Bocconi and Luis in the same place. Italiano, you wanna start on agri-food?
I hate podiums because of obvious reasons, but hello everyone, and I'm Vitaliano Fiorillo. I'm the director of the Invernizzi Agri Lab at SDA Bocconi, and I'm introducing the presentation on the agri-food PSG. And what you're going to see in this presentation is talking about loss and damage and actionable solutions, where you're going to see a ready solution that we have, which is regenerative agriculture, that has to deal with the soil, which is not only the resource at the base of biodiversity and environmental sustainability worldwide, is at the core of our ability to give food, nutritious food and stable food supply globally, but is also at the core, in our business perspective, of the sustainability of farms themselves. Soil has been a widely and long time neglected issue in farms as well as global level. We are losing arable land day after day. We have half the arable land that we had like 50 years ago. And part of this arable land, due to intensive agriculture and intensive use of chemistry in soils, is very much degraded, as you know. Some of the land, even here in Italy, but worldwide probably is even worse. Some of the land, we could say it's actually barren. And we have chemistry, we have technology that might help us using this barren land again as a substrate for growing, but we don't leave anything in the soil and we are not contributing to regenerating the soil. Basically, we use it as a substrate that has nothing in it and will have nothing in it after we have done collecting, harvesting the crops. So regenerative agriculture is not a concept, is a set of techniques defined, framed, and it's ready. Then what we need is just a small, very small step to introduce regenerative agriculture worldwide. And this very small step is not even a, let's say, a moral step. It's just a simple business step. It's an investment. You need to cover the initial J curve of 5 years, 5 to 6 years, and then you will have a profitable investment, a better soil, and the starting of regeneration of biodiversity and climate control from the soil, from the ground up. So that's what we're going to present, and our students from the Master in Sustainability Management have worked on, and they are going to present it later on in the panel about agri-food. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vitaliano. The work that you have done on agri-food, on loss and damage, and energy transition, the grids for energy transition has been just fantastic. The webinars were really. Matteo, you wanna?
Thank you, Francesco, and welcome everybody. So energy transition, as you probably know, is responsible for, well, actually energy use is responsible for 80% of greenhouse gases. So tackling climate change means tackling the energy uses. And every scenario you take right now is basically based on the fact that we decarbonize by, let's say, 2050, but relies mostly on two drivers. One is the decarbonization of energy production, which namely means green technology, renewables mostly, but also electrification. Okay, so renewables, green technologies, and electrification. It's all very good. We have all this amount. The International Energy Agency says that we need to triple the amount of renewable capacity between now, basically, and 2030. I was the discussant on another scenario from a well-known energy company. So, and you see this amount of renewable energy, which will be theoretically deployed in the next few years. But there's one, not the elephant in the room, but something that people tend to neglect, which is actually how you're going to connect all of these technologies. And also the fact that actually we know by now that in order to reduce the carbon impact of the way that we use energy, very often we need to electrify the way we do energy. And electrification means you need the wire. You need something to connect. And so that's why the idea came up, basically. And there's an enormous body of literature tackling that, because it's very much, and this is really frustrating, if I may say, from my economist perspective, it's a problem which has never been solved, okay? It's a very complex problem, but is by far becoming one of the probably 3 Achilles heel of the energy transition. If we don't sort it out, we're never gonna make it. There's no fancy technology. We're not going to be able to connect all these data centers that we so desperately need. We're not going to have all these electric cars going around. And transport, by the way, as you know, is the largest source of pollution in more advanced economies. So none of these things is going to happen, or at least in the timeline that we have set up so far, unless we sort out the grid problem, which is whether it's a transmission problem or distribution problems. And by all means, it's a very multidimensional problem, so to say, because actually the kind of problem you may have in a developing country in terms of providing grid access, in terms of financing this grid access, is completely different when you're developing the grid in an urban area because you want to have electric vehicles, or you want to connect data centers, or you want to connect large amount of renewable technologies, which have this annoying kind of feature of being located, the best wind resources, far away from the demand center. So you need to connect them, you need to come up with a solution. And that's why the work of our students, they decided to tackle this problem. It's a very complex problem because also the issue in terms of regulation, because these companies usually tend to be regulated because there are problems with supply bottlenecks, and because actually it's very much, as I said before, constraining the energy transition. It's a kind of a problem that is becoming rather well known to say, but not so much the solutions, okay? Because this is very much one of those cases when you could say, no, you don't have one size fits all. It's not that we fix the problem here in north of Italy, we're going to be able to fix it in Angola, or let alone in the US. So it's a very bad problem. And I like to think, actually, I'm convinced that my student did a pretty good job in giving you the overview of what the problems are, and they came up with some interesting solution in terms of recommendation, what need to be done. I would say sooner rather than later. Hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you.
So we have three dream teams with three dream chairs. Oliver Morton from The Economist. You will chair the loss and damage here, if I'm not wrong. Laura, where is Laura? Laura Hood. Okay. Okay.